question. Can you move? Macrophage differentiation.
M2 and M1.
Yes, yes.
Good afternoon. So my question goes like this. I have said that there are two populations of macrophages in adipocytes. So one is M1 and another is M2. So M1 performs a pro-inflammatory role, while M2 has contribute to inflammation. So did you check on all this expression or expression of all or the role they play?
Okay, that question is there. I will take one more and then we can get the speakers to answer. One more question? Oh, there we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Manasseh from the University of Nairobi. Okay. My name is Manasseh from the University of Nairobi. I also have a question for you, Professor. Yeah, so you say the total fruit juice has an immunoproliferative effect on the Th2 phenotype in one of your conclusions, but in the data that you showed us, the cytokines for Th2 are suppressed, so I didn't understand how that comes about.
Okay, I think Professor Akadiri is in a hot seat. All the questions are his.
Thank you very much for the question. That is an interesting question about M1, macrophages 1 and macrophages 2. Really, we did not in this study discriminate between the subtype of macrophages, but as we noticed that in human beings as well as in animal studies, we noticed that ILTs and TNF-alpha increase in diabetic subjects, so that we can conclude that it's mainly related to M1. But in this study, we did not discriminate between the both types of macrophages. And the second question related to the production of cytokines, Th2 cytokines. Yes, I say that the total fruit juice or leafy stem juice induce lymphoproliferative action. And the cytokine, you remark that Th2 cytokine decrease or increase? Decrease.
You say the cytokines decrease, yes, but in the conclusion you said total fruit juice.
No. It is Th2 cytokines decrease and Th1 cytokines increase. And this is concomitant with the proliferation of the cell induced by the extract. That's what I'm saying. Yes. Yes. It is very, very coherent.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Henry Nyongesa. I'm from Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology, located in Western Kenya. My first question goes to Professor Akadiri. That was quite an interesting presentation, where I did my MSc, my DSc. One of my colleagues was doing actually a study on Momodica carantia and its effect on diabetes. My question goes on one of your conclusions where you are suggesting that Momodica carantia could potentially be used for treatment. So I'm interested in knowing, and I think this is something that was highlighted before, the gap between translating basic research to clinical applications. I don't know whether you have any plans to translate in terms of getting the dosage for this Momodica carantia. How much are people supposed to be consuming? Is it on a daily basis or is it on a weekly basis? Yeah, so, and then my second question goes to Professor Khan. It was quite an interesting presentation with a suggestion about some anti-obesity spray, something like that, yes. So I was interested in, like in an African context where we have, especially in a rural setting where there is consumption of mostly unrefined foods, like raw natural foods, whether they have any potentially an effect on modifying the signaling molecules that you mentioned, like the CD36 and GPR120. Do you think that just consumption of, say, natural foods can maybe down-regulate GPR120, and that can actually be like a natural way of just evading from the obesity pandemic? Thank you.
Okay, and then we can have the responses before I take two more.
I can give the response first.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Because yes, I know. You know that Momotica sharensia is the plant almost used by our population. You eat, we eat, and everybody eats. They use this plant, and they use this plant for its anti-diabetic properties. But we perform our study in animals, really. Now, we did not transfer to the clinical setting, but the level of this study is that you have to, the fruited juice, you have first the juice from the fruit will appear to be more effective than the juice from leaf. That is the first conclusion. The second is that you have to filter your fruit, your juice, before use. Because if you filter it before use, you have the effect, the beneficial effect. But however, if you do not filter it before use, you can have opposite effect. So that is a suggestion that I can do for you. But we did not, at this time, perform the clinical study.
Yes, in the same context, remember, I think you're forgot. We have isolated a protein of 60 kilodalton that is responsible to decrease glycemia. So we have the protein which is isolated and exerts anti-hyperglycemic effects, and commercialization is a different thing because it requires controlled studies in humans, and perhaps that's correct. Yeah, you said about the natural food, well, fat is fat. Fat is always bad in excess. The problem is this, it's a very economic problem. The more you eat, the better you become. We are in a world where we don't do a lot of exercise. We don't walk, we don't run. So this is a question of just the consumption of energies, yes. But what we observe, whether we are genetically obese, like children suffering from Prader-Willi syndrome, or in animal models like mice, whatever is the case, once we develop obesity, CV genesis goes down, and that decreases our palatability for fat. That is the problem. But if you are in excess of fat, whatever is the source, it's bad for us. It decreases CV genesis at that time.
Thank you. Oh, you have an addition, okay.
No, I have a question for one of my colleagues.
I will allow it.
So I was wondering, the mutation in the receptors that you showed in this disease that I had was that in the homozygous context, or was it enough for the heterozygous mutation to cause the disease? I mean, if it's heterozygous, you wonder, is it dominant negative?
You mentioned the mutation of the captain disease.
Exactly, that's the one.
Yeah, even heterozygous cause it. Yes.
So the allele doesn't work.
No.
Okay, another question. I have 3 hands, and then we can close this session. Oh, there's 4 hands. Oh, okay, that's 5 hands. So I have 5 hands before I close this session. I think I've noted the hands.
My name is Chidoke Ago, and I'm from Nigeria in affiliation with Alex Ekeme Federal University, Ebonyi State. So my question is to Professor Naim Khan, and he talked about the taste of fat and its implication in obesity. So my question is, do you think, or to what extent does psychosocial factors like stress and socio-economic factors and cultural norms influence the taste perception of fat and its association with obesity in African populations study?
I'm so sorry, I could not follow your question.
Socio-economic factors affecting
psychosocial factors. Do you think it's affected the influence of the taste perception of fat and its association with obesity in the African populations you study? Psychosocial factors like socioeconomic stress, status, stress, cultural norms, and
yeah, this is a very interesting question. I have 2 responses. What we are witnessing in Europe, that obesity is increasing, particularly in a segment that is living a very poor quality of life. I have seen in hospital consultations the women who have got no job, no love, nothing, no affection, they are getting obese. It's because of stress and corticosteroids, and they prefer to buy some food that is high-fat food, but low-quality food, and they take the enjoyment just by eating and by eating. That is a different story. But it has been seen in a study conducted in New York, in the outskirts of New York, and in a well-off family of the New York. And one colleague of mine from Monel, she did genetic polymorphism, and she said that the children who were determined to be obese because of genetic polymorphism in 2 populations, children from rich family were not obese. And then she asked what is the reason, that they were well informed that excess of fat and excess of sugar is bad. So the information and communication is very important in this sense, and family education. Even we did studies among the children 3 and 4 years old in the crèche in France. We found that these children are given beans with fat, without fat. They always prefer with fat because they are supposed to eat the same thing at home. So family information and communication about food quality and well-being is very important, even though we are genetically predisposed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Abayo Miki from the University of Ibadan, that's in Nigeria. I have 2 questions, one for Professor Kubo, the other for Professor Anna. First, I'd like to commend Professor Kubo for a beautiful lecture on an otherwise abstract topic. Because anyone who has ever stood in a lecture where they're talking about ion channels, if you're not imaginative, you may not understand what they're saying. So I'd like to commend you on that. My observation and question goes first. In your presentation, most of the channels that you seem to have investigated in details are sodium and potassium ion channels. But what happens to channels like calcium, magnesium, ATPase channels? Are they not as important as sodium, potassium channels? Don't they exhibit the variety that you have studied for sodium and potassium channels? I just need to understand why haven't you studied calcium and magnesium channels as well? Can I ask the second question, or you want to answer that?
No, ask the question.
Okay, to Professor Anna, I noticed you studied pre and post exercise modifications in non-diabetic patients and in diabetic patients. And I observed that most of what was studied was one bout of 30 minutes exercise. First, I'd like to ask, why 30 minutes? Why one bout of 30 minutes? Why not one bout of 10 minutes? And why not one bout of 45 minutes like that? Secondly, given that the benefits gained from exercise are often derived from repetitive exercise, don't you think that if you were to study post-exercise modifications after repetitive exercise, you may see a better adaptation in type 2 diabetic patients? That is, their response to exercise may improve. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope the answers are more brief than the questions.
Let me first confirm your question. You want to ask the importance of other ion channels, which I did not introduce.
Why those ones aren't studied, and why the focus on sodium and potassium channels?
I see.
Sometimes the voice sounds
very simple answer is no strong reason. And I think all types of ion channels are as important. And all channels are worthy for study. But we cannot cover all types. And if we find something very interesting, for example, abnormal ion selectivity or non-canonical voltage-dependent gating, we want to dig it. But we cannot cover all types of ion channels. But please understand, all types of ion channels are as important for our function.
So I'd say thank you for great questions. You're very observant. So why pick 30 minutes? It's a brilliant question. 10 minutes is too short. 45 minutes is very hard for the patient. So it's basically one of these things. 30 minutes we know most people can do when you do 85% of heart rate. So that's why the 30 minutes. And we know that 30 minutes of exercise will give an effect on glucose control for the rest of that day. Then the question, why not a training study? Of course we should do a training study. And we should do different kinds of exercise. This was biking exercise. And it's just a matter of, we wanted to do all these rather, or very, very expensive omic analysis, so we wanted to really control. We wanted to know, what did the patients eat, when did they last eat, and take the biopsies exactly at the right times, at the right time of the day as well, so don't have anything there. And you just can't control people that well. It just becomes so difficult. So this was the easy way out, in order for us to get enough N numbers. We have tried to do some training studies, but people get ill, they forgot to go to their training, they have to go away for a Christmas meal. But those studies need to be done. They need to be done. Just because they're difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. They need to be done. But we start with a low-hanging fruit. I think that's what we were told in the morning. Start with the easy ones.
My question is directed to Professor Akadiri. You talked about filtering the fruit, the juice. What kind of filter do you use?
That's a secret.
I love that. More answers like those. It's my turn. Okay, thank you.
I asked the professor about the iron.
Closer to your mouth.
Close. My question is, how does the disturbance in ion channels will cause diseases? What's the mechanism? It's mainly because the dysregulation in the cell volume or cell excitability and action potential.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
It's my question about that when we have mutations in the ion channels, that the disturbance, the mechanism of disease is due to changes in the cell volume, because we know cell volume is highly regulated by ion movement, or because it affects the excitability and the resting potential of the cell?
Yeah, in the ion channel mutation associated diseases, so there are various reasons. So for example, if there is a mutation in the voltage sensor, so the voltage-dependent gating is hampered, but also by the mutation in the selectivity filter, there is abnormal selectivity. And also there are other types of mutations which affect trafficking to the membrane. So surface expression to the front of the membrane is hampered. So that's why, depending on the type of mutations, the reason why the disease is caused is varies. Did I satisfy your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Okay, my question. I heard two concepts now. Professor Naim and then Professor An. Yeah. So the concept I heard is one, satisfactory to you. Satisfactory. So when someone, a child up to 8 years, gets something or tests something and then they try to develop test memory. Am I correct? And you say that the fetus or a child born to a pregnant diabetic mother. Is that you or someone? A pregnant diabetic mother becomes later on obese, and then you say that is metabolic memory. Yes. You see, they are overlapping concepts if you carefully watch them. Is it really metabolic memory or metabolic plasticity? Number one, if you know. In the case of neural system, a memory, what does memory mean? A memory means that when neurons make some change in response to some stimulus, they make some change, and then they store information. What we call is the stored information, that is a change. So, in a sense, that is the concept of memory, and the neural change is plasticity. In your case, in the case of, I mean, should we, I don't know, which that is. The second one is test memory and metabolic memory. In the case of metabolic memory, I suppose that when a child is exposed repeatedly to high blood glucose level, they make some change within the cell, and that change eventually causes obesity. Obesity is a kind of happening. So the real essence should be metabolic plasticity, and I accept that when we work on this concept in the future, plasticity in the memory, the same thing, somebody says plasticity, another says memory. For you, you get one chance for calcium. For calcium, he raised the question, have you ever tried the photofluorescence like isothiocyanate or the fluorides which attach to calcium in order to study the real virtual gating mechanism of body? For sodium you cannot do it, for potassium you cannot do it, you may not do it. So to my knowledge there are no guys that can fluoresce from these ions, but calcium is known for fluorescence. It is excellent to track when they move down and up through fluorescent microscope and then see the gating mechanism. Have you ever tried that?
Well, at least we have like the 4th Congress, eh? It's 4th Congress topic. I have one, that was the last one that I am told I have to move on, but further discussions can go on another time. This was the last one.
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. One for Professor Anna and the second one for Professor Kubo. So Professor Anna, I'm interested in knowing the characteristics of the diabetic patients that we use. So were they, before they were put on medication for diabetes, were they maybe 20 years diabetic? And or was this effect that you found after exercise irrespective of their status? And Professor Kubo, about I think generally protein specificity of interaction is very interesting. But in the case of ion channels, we talked about the size of potassium versus sodium being the most important way that these channels differentiate between the two. Okay? Is that the only mechanism? And bearing in mind that there are like the divalent mutual transporters, which can recognize several divalent ions. So what are the other mechanisms of specificity?
Yes, just about the first question. Regarding the learning of taste qualities, it has been proposed by the scientists who work on the development, child development. They say that up to the age of 8 or 9, this is called a critical age. There are many changes in the brain, of course, it always happens. According to the theory of Hiro, every time there is a plastic new connections, some of them are regressed, some of them connected, but up to the age of 8 to 9, these connections are involved in the creation of gustatory memory. But it doesn't mean after 9 or 10 years we cannot change it. For example, I went to Beijing and I never ate grilled scorpions. Then I was watching the people eating grilled scorpions. And I was afraid, how can I eat them? But they were enjoying it. I said, let me try. I put it in my mouth and I said, it's not a scorpion, it's something different. And I enjoyed it. But I was looking in my memory, it resembles something I ate 10 years before in London. So I kept the memory of something. But I have to collect the gustatory memory, like in the hard disk of the computer, and I change it. Is it the same or is it the same? Now, I create another memory. Next time I will be invited to eat grilled scorpions, I know what is the taste of a scorpion. So I corrected it. But by the point of view, critical development of the child, gustatory qualities are encoded up to 8 to 9 years. That's why this is an age that's very important for the sake of obesity. And as Dr. Akadiri said, that macrozoic children, they are supposed to be up to the incidence of 50%, one after the two, to become obese or insulin resistant at the age of adulthood. So this memory is very important. That's why the gustatory memory up to 8 or 9 years is important, and obesity among children is very important parameter that we always use.
So my question was, what was the general characteristic of the type 2 diabetic people that we studied? And they were not completely newly diagnosed. Our exclusion criteria were, we did a cardio stress test on them to make sure that they could actually do the biking exercise. Nearly all of them were on metformin, but not on the day that we tested them. Metformin is something that nearly every single person with type 2 diabetes is on. We excluded people who were on any other type 2 diabetic medications, but we had to keep metformin in or we wouldn't have any patients. And then, because the person with diabetes sees their doctor more often, they actually had better lipid status than the control group, who didn't get all their lipids seen to. Blood pressure medication was about the same in both groups, but it's, you know, when you study people with type 2 diabetes, you start out thinking, I will have this perfect study and nobody will be on any medication, but then you won't have any patients. So we have to adapt to real life a little bit. But it's a very, very relevant question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think two questions for me are somehow related, so that's why I'd like to answer in total. And the second question about the importance of divergent cation channels, is that correct? So yes, in addition to sodium or potassium channel, divergent channel, cation channel, especially calcium channel, is very important. So the concentration gradient of extracellular, intracellular calcium is more than 20,000 times. So as you know, calcium is a very important biological factor in the cytoplasm. So that's why the study of calcium channel is as important, very important. And to answer to the first question, so the monitoring of calcium concentration in the cell is very important using calcium fluorophore or protein theta to ion channels. By using this kind of fluorophore, we can track the very local calcium concentration, for example, in organella or subplasma membrane, and or in the total cytoplasm. So these are very important approaches, and we also use it sometimes.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, so we're gonna modify our thunderclap, okay? Now we're gonna involve a little bit of raindrops before we start, okay? So we're gonna start, and there we go, and there we go, and thunderclap. Thank you very much, oh dear speakers, thank you. Time to stand before the WHO has a word to say to me about making you sit for all this time. So we're gonna stand for 10 minutes, have your tea, and be back here 1:45. Please don't forget to scan this. This has your book of abstracts. We'll be back. It will be 2 rooms, and Asha Bilan will be able to explain what each room would encompass it. But let's be back 4:45.